So one of the tools that I want to show y'all for literature reviews is that there's actually a LibGuide, a research guide created for your course that covers literature reviews. I'm going to show you how to get to it. So from the library's homepage, you're going to click the Guides tab in the middle of the screen, and you can either type in EDAD or you can go to Browse All Research. It's easier just to type in EDAD. And it's going to be this top one, EDAD Research and Writing. So this guide has a lot of different information in there, everything from getting started on your doctoral all the way to lit reviews, annotated bibliographies, citation sources. A lot of information is found in this guide. What I want to show today is the literature review tab. So this goes over the steps for creating a literature review, and it breaks each of the pieces down and gives you links for further information. So the very first thing you do when you're starting on your literature review is you define your scopes, your objectives, you make your research question, deciding, what's the reason for the literature review. Are you trying to look at what's existing literature out there? Are you trying to identify gaps? Are you looking at methodologies? Like, what is the reason for the literature review? Which direction are you going to come at this research from? Once you have that scope and objectives, you will move into actually doing the literature search itself. So you would be looking for databases that you want to use. The library's OneSearch, it's a good place to get some background information. Basically, you want to list where can you find information. Google Scholar, the internet as a whole. And then once you start finding literature, you're going to start having to organize it and develop themes. And how are you going to do it more of a methodological organization, or chronological? Are you going by times and dates of, how did things develop over time, which is really great for a history perspective, or historical perspective on what you're researching. Or are you looking more on like classroom management styles? You can organize everything in a different methodology rather than chronological. And from here, you also have, this would be the point where you would be finding sources, and you're going to be evaluating sources. So there's links to more information there. Once you have a decent amount of literature compiled, and decent amount depends on what you're researching, how much literature do you feel like you actually need to have in order to meet the requirements of whatever you're writing. You're going to then summarize and analyze the literature you have. I would suggest starting with the summary portion, just to see where the connections are between the different literatures, where disagreements at. If you summarize everything first, you can start putting everything in like little boxes, so you can group things up. I tend to draw like a concept map at this point with the abstract of the articles. So let's say I have 10 articles I'm working with. For a dissertation, you're going to have a lot more, but for this scenario, we're going to start with just 10. I will read through each article. I will make a document where I have the citation, citation, the reference citation in APA format. I'll then have the abstract that's provided usually by the author or publisher, and then I'll have my thoughts on that particular article. What did I like about it? What did I not agree with? What jumped out at me about that article? Why was I wanting to use it? And then, so I have that for each of those 10 articles, and then I start drawing like this map connecting the different articles together, whether or not like these articles all are agreeing of each other. These are all built on top of each other. This one disagrees with them. This one brings out another thought to add to it. Just start drawing that map. And if you put it in a visual concept map, you can sit there and move pieces around, which can help with you when you start actually writing the lit review. It can help you determine where you're going to mention which articles at and when. You'll also start analyzing the different studies, and as I said, how are they related to each other. Once you have all that together, you'll move on to the actual writing phase. And this part is the part where we're going to direct you to probably like the writing center, because they're a really great tool for actually helping you determine, or actually help you review things, learn tips and tricks for finding those little errors that most people will kind of just look over. Because by the time you have written this literature review, you've done a lot of reading, you've done a lot of writing, and you get to the part where you're actually editing it, you can become error blind is what I call it, but you kind of blind to like the double D's and double ofs. And then you can come blind to certain areas, and having those tips and tricks from the writing center to help you review that your writing can also be very helpful. I'm going to scroll down. I also, on this guide, I have linked out some videos to Sage research methods. It's a great database tool for learning about the different methods of research and learning about different writing styles. The videos I pulled specifically for this are how to build a literature review, critiquing the literature, and concepts for critique writing. I think these videos are very useful for someone who is learning how to write a literature review, whether or not you've already written some in the past or this is brand new to you. I think those videos are a really great tool. I also link out to how to critique journal articles. This is a really great tool for evaluating and analyzing those various articles that you are using in your research. So I definitely would suggest getting that checked. I would definitely suggest checking out those videos and those resources that are provided. And if you have time, going through this particular guide just to look over the various resources that's provided. Saying all of that, are there any questions that you have about literature reviews?
What's the proper length? Like we're ideally beginning our dissertation. Was there like a standard? I mean, maybe I should know that already within EDAD, but is there a standard like your literature review has to be 25 pages or whatever it may be? Do you have any idea or?
There's not really a standard for literature review. I have seen ones that are 25 pages. I've seen 50.
Yeah.
It really depends on the scope and the objective of what you are, like what's your research question, what's your reasoning behind this literature review. Because if you want to review enough literature to answer your question fully. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
And go back down a little bit on the screen. Oh wait, let's see, where were we? Yeah, the analyze and I think it's go a little bit further.
Yep.
The write and revise review.
Okay.
Just looking at that kind of breakdown or that outline. I know you said that's kind of a writing thing. Or would these be suggested kind of pages or sections, I guess I should say, like purpose and scope, research questions that so like in the class we're in now, we had this past Sunday, we had to turn one in, and I started one in I can't remember what class it was. And so I used that one, revamped it, all that good stuff. But I don't have those exact titles. Or those just suggestions, or they're just kind of telling you what could happen, or is there kind of a standard like you should have this one along with whatever you have, but these got to be in there?
This is more of just like the basic literature review is going to include these parts. You're going to have the very beginning of it. It's going to include the purpose and scope. This is your introduction. This tends to be a standard on any They also call it like background information will sometimes be the subtitle or the
Mhm.
subheading. Um, I've seen introduction, I've seen background information. I've also seen them authors just use the word objective as the beginning portion.
Yeah.
Uh, and then the body depends on, you'll have multiple sections for the body. So this depends on how you are going to organize. It goes back to, are you looking at it from a methodological perspective? Are you looking at a chronological perspective? What are the different themes that you've pulled out? How do you have you grouped the different literatures together? So you're going to have those different sections throughout the body portion.
Okay.
Um, and then you're going to, depending on how you write it, the critical analysis may be a separate paragraph. You may have a section. Let's say we're breaking down classroom management. We're doing more of a historical perspective. So we have classroom management from the 1920s, then the 1930s, and then so on and so forth. So each section would have literature from the 1920s, and then it would have it would describe the themes, and it would sit there and summarize it, analyze it, and then do a critical analysis of it. Or it may have all the literature done, an analysis of each section, and then have an overall critical analysis of the overall portion. So the critical analysis would be its own section. Um, and then, of course, in the conclusion, you're going to have the summary, any gaps you have, which sometimes I've seen that be called further research, further development. Um,
Yeah, so my conclusion, it says like its conclusion, strengths, weaknesses, and contributions of the literature review. So that kind of
yes,
cover different way of saying, gaps or, strengths would be good things, the weaknesses would be the gaps, so
yeah. So that this is just a basic outline of it.
okay.
It that depends all on how you're writing it and the direction you go with it.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Awesome. I'm sorry, I'm chiming in. I was sitting here and had my timer so to come in, but same deal. I turned in what I had been working on in another class. But what I realized, I have my things grouped together, but it really is more kind of like annotated bibliography. I haven't like nuanced them, and that's the feedback that I basically received. And so I'm now at the point where I'm like, I have things like in the different categories or themed out, but they're not. It's basically is I have like multiple annotated bibliographies. That's what I
Mhm.
realized that I have. So, what suggestions do you have? Because I have quite a lot of information, but now I'm going to have to really kind of go back and rewrite this so that the flow is a lot different.
So you're going to be working with the either flow of transitions. I would suggest looking at some examples of literature reviews and seeing
Hmm.
how they categorize things and how they
Yes.
transition from one section to the next. Um, because each section is going to be like each section is going to analyze all the literature that you found about that fits that theme. How are they
Hmm.
connected? You're going to have those, you're going to pull out those points in that section that is about that. So having an annotated bib for each section is actually a really good idea. It can help you, but you're going to have to, instead of having it broken down um, by each separate reference,
Yes.
you have to put the references together. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. I would suggest trying to start with just one theme at a
Hmm.
time, get one done, and then move on to the next.
Yeah.
If that makes
I realized that as I was because what now right now is really kind of just choppy. It's like
Mhm.
it's almost like I have my you know, back in the day, and going to the library and you have your index cards.
Mhm.
So so basically, I have them. They're everything is in order, but now I need to like really kind of bring them in, you
Now,
know, together.
I've I've seen literature reviews, like, they have that choppiness, and the
Hmm.
only way they had the transition was that they just had a new subheading. There was
Right, and
no
that's not what.
so I've seen that happen. Um, Another suggestion would be how are you organizing? Are you doing it by theme or are you doing it by methodology? Like how are you
Right now is by theme.
okay.
And so that's that's where I am right now. Is so they are organized by theme. So I know that that's where they are, and then there's a couple other sections that I do need to add. Um,
I
but
would
when I got the feedback, I was like, I'm in agreement, um, because it's. But now I really do need to bring them in together and just really showing how they are connected, and then that way I'll also see where the gaps are too.
Yeah, so you may want to sit down and like really think and reflect on, okay, why did you choose this theme? Why,
Mhm.
why it goes back to why did you choose these particular articles? What drew you to those articles? Why that theme did you point out? And then
Right.
how does the first theme connect to the second theme? Which themes kind of go together
Hmm.
and then build the flow that direction? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Uh,
So
I would
thank you.
No problem. I would also suggest looking at the video of how to build a literature review.
Okay.
That should also help you. I think I'm wanting to say it's towards the end of the video
Hmm.
that it starts talking about, um, it's either at the very end or it's the very beginning because it's been a while since I've watched the video. And I may be getting 2 points mixed up, but it starts talking about how to actually go from one section to the next.
This does take time.
Yes. And unfortunately, literature reviews don't happen overnight. You think you're going to spend the most of the time doing the research, and I feel in any of the writings I have ever done, I spent most of the time writing, not the research portion.
Hmm.
Um, or at least the analyzing portion took me the longest.
Yes, right now I'm at about like 25 pages. And I still have some areas that I know that I need to add in, and so plus with the feedback, so I'm wanting to stop. And like you said, thank you for that suggestion. Just go section by section, so I can start bringing in that flow. Um, so
And
yeah,
hopefully when you do start by going by section, a pattern will develop and you can
right,
see where your thought pattern was going
yes,
and kind of helps you get back to the what you're wanting to do.
right,
um, I'm also a visual person, so concept maps are awesome.
hmm,
So even if you were to just I'm also a pen and paper person, so when I start trying to figure out how when I started writing all this, I had a connection. At this point, I have a whole bunch of things together, so now I figure out where that connection went. So I'll start writing the themes out and then put like one or two thought processes to that theme, and then try to figure out how did I get from one to the next. Any other questions?
well, thank you so much.
I'm here, and of course, if you come up with any questions down the road, you're more than welcome to shoot me an email. Um, and I will be this whole session was recorded, so I know you came in a little bit late, so you'll be able to see the very beginning of the section.
Okay,
session, as well as I will take these questions that were asked. I will type them up as I did for the previous session in answers, and I may do a little bit of research and be able to flush out those answers a little bit more. So you'll have the written questions down as well.
But thank you so much.
No problem. Please shoot me an email if you have any questions. And if y'all don't, I will call in an early time and let y'all go. Y'all have a wonderful evening.